Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to our fourth session. And I invite you to rename yourselves if you like, offering your pronouns and the native land from which you are joining us. For the small groups today, they're going to be self-chosen, so you don't need to rename yourselves with the @ and pound sign like we've done these last times. So today we're going to do a little bit of visioning, kind of imagining, what could be. As you remember, the first session we talked about values, and especially exploring the tension between our stated values, the ones we hold consciously, and the values that are expressed through our action, and kind of noticing where those tensions are and thinking about how we might address the tensions. And then in the second class, we talked about safety, dignity, and belonging. And I offered a document where I tried to edit down the notes from the small groups, where people shared kind of what they need to feel safe, safety, dignity, and belonging. And some of the things that they said, that we said, were people want to be greeted, to be met with open body language, with eye contact, with a smile. And then some sensitivity, because some people want to be left alone at that point to kind of wander. And some people want to be attended to, or kind of, someone to be with them. People want their thoughts, feelings, and opinions respected and taken into account when decisions are made. BIPOC want white allies present to intervene when harm arises. This adds to that sense of safety. And similarly, women want male allies present to intervene if there's a man causing harm. People want a protocol for repairing harm, knowing that they can make a mistake and there's a way to recover and to learn from it. People want clear rules, kind of to know what's happening next and know what's going on, to not feel that, there's insider knowledge and I'm out, I'm on the outside. And a lot of people mentioned that they wanted a chance for intimate sharing, small groups, a way to, feel known, seen and known by others. And then last time we talked about the right use of power, in particular about ways of kind of exercising power, ways of holding power that lead to greater equity. So we gave the example of a shared leadership practice at EBMC where we have community agreements. This is our mission, this is our vision, these are our agreements for how we will be with each other. This is our strategic plan, all of those, but those are documents or practices named by the community, so that people who make decisions at EBMC are referring to those, so that a person in a position of authority, isn't in the position of, well, I'm the boss, so this is what I want to do, but rather, I'm on the leadership sangha, or I'm part of the program committee, or I'm on the staff. And here's how in my role, I am kind of working to kind of manifest these agreements that we've made. So it's a different way of thinking about and exercising power. And so Rhonda is going to offer us a practice focusing, to help us focus attention on the body, which is an important kind of preparation for this visioning exercise. And then Mushim will take it from there.
Thank you so very much, my dear Crystal and my dear Mushim, Anna, Allison, supporting us behind, and every single one of you who's here present with us today. And then I'm just going to expand this out to extend it to those that we know will be listening and watching this in some measure later. Welcome. So pausing to invite us, each in our own ways, to prepare ourselves for a short guided meditation, a practice aimed at really opening the spaces within us for deepening our exploration of the themes, many community one sangha, and exploring just how it is that we might re-envision the particular communities that we're in, beginning with ourselves. So I'm going to ring the bell now and lightly guide us in a meditation to support us. So bringing our attention to the sensations of resting and awareness of the body in this moment. Perhaps first selecting a particular point of focus, point where you're able to sense the body in contact with that which supports you physically right now, whether it's a chair, a bed, or cushion, the floor, and feeling the ground beneath all of this. The earth, fundamentally, as a support for our beingness. So literally, the plot of land that you're on right now. And as you breathe in and out, literally, the air that you're breathing. And that you're contributing to as you breathe in, receiving and releasing, breathing out. Feel the ground of the support that exists for you right here, right now, in this intimate relationship between body, earth, air. Sensing the quality of heartful engagement with this experience. Perhaps some appreciation is arising for that which enables you to breathe in and out, to be present here in this moment. The body as it is, with all of its beautiful perfections and imperfections that got you here. So opening up awareness to the sense of the body as a whole, as we breathe in and out, as we experience ourselves being breathed, right? The breathing in relationship between the body, earth, body, context, environment, inner to outer mindfulness experience, if you will, awarenessing at this moment. Just opening up spaciousness in the midst of all of that. And as we allow our attention to apprehend the spaciousness within us, gently inviting now each in turn the senses in the body to be known as objects of our awareness, as we're sitting and noticing the gentle points of contact between body and support beneath us, chair, cushion, bed, floor, whatever it happens to be, and the gentle in-breath and out-breath, again, a contact experience. Sensing the sense of touch, that quality of being in physical contact, touch with the cushion, being contacted by the breath itself, caressed by the breath, and caressing the air as we breathe. Now releasing a focus on the sense of touch, perhaps opening up or turning our attention to the sense of hearing, sound, the ability that we may have in varying degrees in this moment to hear the sound of my voice, perhaps if you're able, the sound within our own body, the beating heart perhaps, very faintly. Again, easeful, not straining, just resting, opening up the sense of sound, hearing, as an embodied sense, a measure of your relationship, the auditory nerve, the impulses from that inner ear to the brain, all of this rich, magnificent system, these systems allowing us to appreciate sound and impulses, resting in that river of sensory experience that we call sound, as best we have it. Some of us amplify sound with the support of hearing devices. Wherever we are on that continuum of ability, disability around sound, inviting, welcoming as best we can, opening up to that sense, breathing in and breathing out. Grateful in whatever degree we feel it, for this capacity to the degree that we have it. Now releasing awareness of that particular beautiful ability to hear sound, voice, bird song, the footsteps of a loved one who's nearby. Letting that go for now. And inviting appreciation of the sense of smell, opening up to that sensory experience that is often associated with a certain reactivity, neurobiologically informed, right? Smell kind of gives us a sense of when things are safe to eat, perhaps, or to come closer to move away from. A lot of information in the sense of smell, but also a lot of memories locked in. So the smells from that particular place where we felt safe enough, particular foods. Opening up the sort of sense memories, if you will. But in this moment, noticing as you breathe in and out, what can you sense right here, right now, if you open up the sense of smell? Noticing the difficulty, any challenge there, easeful, bringing in ease, compassion, letting go of judgment. There's no right or wrong here. And letting go of that invitation, now gently just sitting again in choiceless awareness. By which I mean to say just sitting in the space of your being, your presence, the dignity of this moment of your life. And now, whether the eyes are closed in this moment or open, and yet resting, perhaps on a point of focus chosen to support you in this kind of inner to outer journey, the invitation is to maybe allow a bit of reflection on the sense of sight. So again, we can do this with eyes closed, actually. But if we're willing, we can open the eyes and just allow, just to notice what happens when we take in sight, registering what we see and the associations that we make, assumptions, judgments, just noticing. Again, the way we're, again, processing what the sense of sight brings, the brain very heavily involved in sense making, storytelling about what we see. So if the eyes have been closed, perhaps opening them. If the eyes have been open, perhaps closing them. Again, giving ourselves a little bit of engaged practice around this magnificent sense of sight. Again, to the degree we have it through the eyes. If we're not able to see through the eyes, opening up that aperture of sight within us, or if in degrees we're able to see, as many of us have noticed changes in that ability to see things through the eyes from time to time in our lifespan. Wherever we happen to be in relationship to this sense, as all the senses. No right or wrong, and then we're just using language to approximate however it is that you are feeling and being with these concepts that we're labeling senses, pointing toward some dimension of our experience without meaning to limit or prefigure what it's like for you. So as we begin to gently perhaps allow a releasing of the focus on the sense of sight and come back to open, spacious awareness, if you're willing, sitting for these final moments, resting, if you will, whether sitting, lying, standing, these final moments in this body, in this moment, in this place. Letting go of thought, letting go of any challenges, and bringing in the spirit of loving compassion for whatever has arisen for you in this meditation. Bringing in that underlying desire for compassionate holding of your experience that I hope infuses every moment of your lives. Calling forth the intentions that you bring to practice into this particular session. What draws you here, unique gifts, and how might we move from this practice into a deeper engagement with the call of this session from here.
For that beautiful practice. So we'll now turn it to Mushim, who is going to lead us, or is going to talk about visioning and then lead us in a visioning practice.
Thank you, Rhonda, for the beautiful practice. And thank you to Crystal, Anna, and Allison. We are the team that is trying to serve, doing our best to serve all of you towards our common purposes of coming together. We hope in a new way, actually, to vision together, to feel together, and to dream into being together. Buddhist communities that are more deeply diverse, equitable, and inclusive. So, with your permission, what I'd like to do now is to talk a little bit about a visioning process that will kick off today, and that I actually hope, if this is something new for you, that you'll continue for the rest of your life. I mean, I'll just put it out there, because we need to keep renewing. One of the defining properties of something that's dead is that it's not growing and its cells are not renewing. I mean, it's kind of going in the other direction. And thus it is the same for the health of our physical bodies, of our sangha bodies, of the body of the Dharma itself, if I may be so bold. So I'll talk a little bit about that and my take on it, and then inviting you into this process of allowing yourself to be open, to be playful, to be maximum creative without, because, we're not there. We're not even in the same physical space. No one is going to be looking over your shoulder or criticizing you or saying, well, that's stupid. Well, we could never have that. Well, yeah, that would cost too much money. Or, but, our lineage doesn't really allow for that. No. This is a time when we're going to encourage you to just open up and not worry, because you don't have to share things with other people unless you want to. You will define your own level of safety and disclosure, and you will also know for yourself. You will know for yourself. I am a creative being. I particularly like the verse in from Shantideva's Way of the Bodhisattva, Guide to the Way of the Bodhisattva, when Shantideva says, may I also be the source of life for all the living beings. As a mother, I resonate with that. And as a practitioner, that has become increasingly meaningful to me, particularly during the climate crisis that is now upon us. So how do we revision? What is a new vision? We're each positioned in different ways. We have different positions of power, leadership, status, or lack thereof in our Buddhist communities. Perhaps we've joined as an individual practitioner who is looking for a Buddhist community. There is great diversity probably among those of us. There are 62 of us here today in this Zoom meeting, and this is the penultimate class. This is class 4 of 5. In this, I would call it, actually, we're all involved in an initiative. This is a campaign. This is an initiative to see whether we can actually, and whether we want to. I mean, I think we might as well be honest. Some of us might be thinking, well, there are very good reasons why we should not want to change things so much in our sanghas, and that can be valid as well. We welcome all viewpoints, and we need to be able to enter into community conversation and hear one another deeply in order for there to be holistic change instead of schisming and fragmentation, which can also happen. So what does it, I want to point us towards what it might feel like to each of us. We began to touch on that in last class. For each of us, we're not thinking about anybody else. Right now, give us permission for you do you, as they say. It's all about me, M-E. Because we know our own experience. We hope we do anyway, and we'd like to get in touch with that. By definition, I cannot know Rhonda's experience. I can't know Crystal's experience, or Anna's or Allison's. That's why we need each other, folks. So for this, we're practicing self-focus. And I'm asking you to consider this. So in 2011, writer and disability justice activist Mia Mingus, in her blog, Leaving Evidence, as far as I know, coined a term. And perhaps one of you, maybe Anna, if you could put it into the chat. Mia Mingus, M-I-N-G-U-S, Mia, M-I-A, coined the term access intimacy. Access intimacy, thank you. And she described it as she is a person with disabilities. She described it as an elusive, hard to describe feeling when someone else gets your access needs. Also, as a sense of, quote, comfort that your entire disabled self feels, unquote. Access intimacy, it's noted in this blog post, is something that helps to heal internalized oppression, stigmatization, and shame. So some of us may self-identify as people with disabilities. I do. Others may not. And I would propose to you that access intimacy is something extremely, as it said, elusive, hard to describe, yet so definite when we feel it. It's a feeling when someone else gets our access needs. To me, access doesn't mean that everything is perfect. if I'm in a wheelchair and there is access to a sangha space, it might be more or less comfortable access. It might be at the sort of high end of the scale where I feel, wow, this is so ideal for me. Unbelievable. Or it might be not quite so great. However, I can see this is an old building. They've tried. The doorways are not so wide, but they are the Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA required, I believe, 3.5 feet width. And I'll take that because I can see that they probably have limited budget. So I'm feeling a little uncomfortable, but hey, still meeting my access needs. Access intimacy, on the other hand, is something else. It's a feeling. It's a feeling that people get that says, this is me, like, welcome home. Welcome home, spiritual seeker, spiritual traveler. And this can take many, many different forms. Obviously, some of those forms are going to be cultural. The well-known writer Arundhati Roy famously has said, "Another world is on its way. On a quiet day, I can hear her breathing." Another world is on its way. On a quiet day, I can hear her breathing. Some of us, not all probably, come from Buddhist lineages with long traditions that have come from very particular cultures, possibly time periods in Asia, and have now come into American or United Statesian or North American culture, some via Europe, actually. There's been a stop along the way, or maybe even a couple. In this diaspora, there have been many translations through language, of course, body language, and architecture, forms of rituals that have changed or not, clothing and garb that has changed or not. As the Dharma has spread, there have been numerous ways in which it's evolved and been translated and co-created into something new that contains what is meaningful and transformative for the new soil into which it is planted from the old lineage traditions. I think my Kalyana Mita, my best spiritual friend, Venerable Suhita Dharma, told me, I think he told me that, I don't know if this is true or not, that originally some of the Buddhist monks that went from India into China, they were like, well, we'll take the Dharma into that, we'll go north, that they were adhering to the monastic code, and they continued to observe the dress code from where they were, and so they froze to death. And then they thought, or the other ones, they didn't think anything because they were dead, but the other ones were like, yeah, I think we got to change this dress code. And they did. And there are many stories there of all of the considerations that go into what cannot be changed, what can be changed, what should be changed. This is ongoing evolution in action, I would say. I remember years ago, near the start of my Zen training, and I had the opportunity to go on a pilgrimage with my original Zen teacher. My home temple was in Michigan. So a bunch of us went down to Mexico and we did this retreat with some of the uh, Zen practitioners in Mexico, around Mexico City. And then everyone went home to various places. And I and a senior student of our mutual teacher had this car loaned to us. It was a Volkswagen Bug. And we drove up from Mexico through Texas, and then we joined our teacher in San Francisco, I think. And we began a pilgrimage of as many Buddhist centers and temples as possible in the Bay Area. And then we headed east through the Rocky Mountains, stopping wherever we could. This was an amazing and invaluable Buddhist education in the incredible diversity of the ways in which the Buddha Dharma has manifested in North America, which was kind of a hobby of my original teacher and one that I myself picked up to my great delight. It's just, it's fun. It's interesting. It's just, I don't know. It's just fun to learn about new things. So we were welcomed very warmly by San Francisco Zen Center City Center. And then we had the chance to visit the Green Gulch Zen Center over in Marin County, where I ended up living for a year sometime later with my son, who was a baby. But this was before that. And I remember a group of us went down into the beautiful flower garden. And then we were kind of making our way back. It was so beautiful. And I ended up walking next to Sojourn Mel Weitzman, who passed recently. But he was a lot younger then, and so was I. And I remember talking to him, and that he impressed me so deeply because he said to me, as I recall, just in this very thoughtful, very open way. He just came across as very open at that time. And he said, our task is to really reflect on what it is that is essential and what it is that is not essential. And he didn't propose any answers, by the way. He put out, if you will, the koan, the meditation question. And so that's what we're opening today as a space for. No one will be looking over your shoulder. Let's open it up and see how we can enrich one another. The basic principle that this team is operating from, and that East Bay Meditation Center, my home temple right now, is based on, is this: cultural humility. Cultural humility. This is a term that, as far as we know, was coined and used by in the medical field some time ago, by two doctors who are women of color, Doctors Melanie Tervalon and Jan Garcia. And you can, if you have not already done so, see it for free. There's a 30-minute video on cultural humility by Vivian Chavez on YouTube, titled Cultural Humility, People, Principles, and Practices. Thank you so much, Anna. It's in the chat. So this is by San Francisco State professor Vivian Chavez, and it mixes poetry with music. So you see, bringing in art and the senses, the modalities of creativity, with interviews, archival footage, and images of community, nature, and dance to explain what cultural humility is and why we need it. The film describes a set of principles that guide the thinking, behavior, and actions. So thinking, behavior, and actions of individuals and institutions to positively affect interpersonal relationships as well as systems change. You can hear how broad this is. What a warm embrace. Interpersonal relationships, so, the way you and I are interacting in the hall of the meditation center, or as we're talking on the phone as sangha members, our relationships over many years, or perhaps briefly, it's a brief interaction on the Dharma path, as well as systems change. These are not two separate things. There are three principles. The first is lifelong learning and critical self-reflection. So I mentioned to you how much fun it is. I just have a lot of fun learning new things. I like to learn new things. And so to develop that zest, that happiness is like, wow, yay, something new to learn. Is it really important? And also critical self-reflection. Critical here doesn't mean that inner critic that's always beating us up. It means critical self-reflection as in critical thinking, asking, developing the mindfulness to catch our thoughts and then to say, wait a minute, what evidence is there for that? What are the sources for that? I think I need to do a little bit of research. Maybe I'll ask my friend. Maybe I'll ask my teacher. Because, as we know, not everything that we Google is actually true. And also, even, our teachers and our friends might be mistaken as well. So each of us is responsible for lifelong learning and critical self-reflection. And that can be like a yippee thing too, like, yay, I just learned something new about myself. Totally cool. All right. It's not all like, oh my God, I just saw the Jungian shadow and it totally sucks. And now I'm overcome by shame. And, that can happen. However, let's remember to balance it out with the yay me part of it too. Second principle of cultural humility, recognizing and changing power imbalances. So those are two different things. They're connected. First, how do we recognize power imbalances? I would submit to you for that we need to have a system of feedback in our communities. Because the whole nature of a power imbalance is that, or power over, is that people in power easily are heard, can affect change, and those who are not in power don't have a platform from which to express their views, or if they do, their views are not taken into account. So how do we recognize power imbalances? Are we open to that? And then next, how do we change them? Do we even want to change them? Those are all valid inquiries, and I'm putting them out in the sense of being, again, open. I think it's important to create that space for ourselves instead of kind of going down the shame chute and saying, well, of course we should be against power over. I don't know. Let's posit, in some situations, maybe not. I am a parent, and there were times, although I actually am not inclined that way, when my child was very young and kept saying, why? They go through that annoying period. And so I would do my best to explain. And then at a certain point, I would say, because I say so, and because I am the adult, and because I am the mother. That would be my last resort. However, sometimes I did go there. And I think it's important to again, be open and to acknowledge the nuances of these conversations. The third principle is developing institutional accountability. For that, I would say we need buy-in from those who are in the positions of the greatest power, sufficient buy-in from those who are in the positions of the greatest power to say, yes, we want to be accountable. We will be accountable for power imbalances. And here's how we'll be accountable. Sangha, how we doing? Are these modes of accountability sufficient? Now, there is suffering in leadership, as those of you who are leaders know. It's not a bed of roses. Thank you so much. Anna has put those in the chat, and you can find them in, I really urge you to go look at that 30-minute movie. I know some of you don't have much time. It's so beautiful. It's got dancing. Yeah, Rhonda's like, yeah. It's got dancing next to Lake Merritt and Oakland, and you know, when they have interviews and they say, well, you know, how would you sum up cultural humility? And some of the people of color just say it's love. They just, you know, they just unabashedly say love. So it's a movie that's really full of joy, and that's what we want to bring here, is that some of the changes that are needed are huge and transformative and can be very painful to some, and also there's the potential for that joy, which I have seen in action. So I can assure you, it is possible. It is there. Doctors Melanie Turvalon and Jan Marie Garcia, this is 1998, also say that, you know, cultural humility is not a concept. It is a process of communal reflection to analyze the root causes of suffering. That should appeal to us as Buddhists, and create a broader, more inclusive view of the world. I hope that appeals to our practice senses as well. Again, referring to this pilgrimage that I went on in 1984, maybe, with my original teacher, I remember that we visited this little tiny, it was like on the 5th floor or 6th floor of a crowded building in San Francisco, Chinatown. And there was a Chinese monk who spoke a little bit of English, and it was in a room that was lit by these flickering fluorescent lights, and you know, they just didn't have much money. And I'll never forget, because that monk said to us, he said, I became a monk because I wanted to discover the world. So, you know, he's not talking about the bazillion rules of the Vinaya and the this and the that and all of this, which are all important in their own way. However, do we have that? Just like little kids, I want to discover the world, and I can do it through my sangha. So again, about cultural humility, it is now used in public health, social work, education, and nonprofit management. It is a daily practice for people who deal with hierarchical relationships, changing organizational policy, and building relationships based on trust. Once again, cultural humility is a daily practice. It's not something that we do on our diversity training weekend. For people who deal with hierarchical relationships, changing organizational policy, and building relationships based on trust. Much has been made of Adrienne Marie Brown's Emergent Strategy book. And one of the principles of emergent strategy is quoting from activist of color Mervyn Mercado, change at the speed, or move at the speed of trust. move at the speed of trust, which, believe me, can be maddeningly slow. However, without trust, those of us who have been in the Buddhist world for a longer period of time have seen the devastating and egregious injuries of destroyal, the destruction of entire sanghas when that trust, that sacred trust has been broken down between teachers and students, between community leaders and members of the sangha who have less power. We have seen that over and over and over again. Do we want to continue that samsaric churning or not? It's a question. A few things to consider are, when we're talking about a more inclusive view of the world, it's always a good question to say, or to a good note in diversity, equity, inclusion, and access work to just state calmly, we don't know what we don't know. That sounds dumb, however, it really is worth thinking about. We don't see what we don't see. How do we make the invisible visible? How do we make the inaudible audible, the cries of the world? One way of doing this, which I think is a good way, is to consider a diagram called Loden's wheel, L-O-D-E-N. Crystal is going to be good enough to screen share that with us. And wow, we've got solitaire. All right. Here we have Loden, L-O-D-E-N, from its originator, diversity consultant Marilyn Loden in the United States. There are many different versions if you Google Loden's wheel. And this is, I think, a pretty good version. In your sangha, you can always add on more rings, concentric rings going outward from the center, which are considered to be the primary dimensions of diversity. And going outward, we can keep adding on dimensions of diversity that are meaningful in our particular sangha. So for instance, in my original sangha, I would say, in all honesty, I was so fortunate. Race and ethnicity were not really a primary form of diversity and inclusion problems or issues. Our primary issue, from my point of view, is that we were multinational. Our mother temple was in Toronto, Canada. So when our two sanghas got together, you know, the Canadians were like, hey, Americans, don't be ugly Americans. And the Americans were like, what does that even mean? We are good people. Isn't everything like the United States? In fact, we don't even call it the United States. It's America. We're Americans. The Canadians are like, no, we're North Americans. And you don't understand. We're a different country. We are different than you. And I trained in Toronto, and the Canadians really impressed that on me. It's like, we are not you. We're better. I was like, okay, sorry. So primary and secondary dimensions of diversity. In the middle, we have what are considered to be primary dimensions, and that means ones that do not necessarily change that much. However, sometimes they do during one's lifetime. And you will be able to access this. So if you like, just take a look at it in a relaxed, open way. We have race, ethnicity, which are not the same thing. Income, age, sexual orientation, sexuality, gender identity, spiritual beliefs, class, physical abilities and characteristics. In the secondary dimension ring, we see even more dimensions of diversity. We are different. Communication styles, first language, family status, political beliefs, geographic location, If we're in an organization, our role and level. Interestingly, military experience. I come from a military family. Rhonda has mentioned about is like, yep. And I resonate with people who come from military families because we share a lot in common. Often very unpopular in politically correct activist circles. It's like we're in the closet. We can't talk about our military backgrounds. However, they're there. So how is it that we can get more information, more data from this abundance? We can look at it as abundance of difference, samenesses and differences within our own sangha. Maybe we are in an area where it's all white people. That's just kind of the way it is. Look at all these dimensions of diversity. There is so much to consider. As people in the United States, I personally think we do need to educate ourselves on the racial divide. It is huge, it's central, and once again, there are many dimensions to diversity. One way to do it is for a sangha to be open to organize and hold what are called town hall meetings, in which certain key questions about where do you think we should be going and how are we doing, the leadership poses to the people in the sangha. This can be done, of course, in if it were pre-pandemic or post-pandemic, best done in real life, in terms of a physical situation and physical meeting. However, it can also be done in cyberspace. And Crystal will share with us an example of a tool that is now available through Zoom called the Jamboard and through other virtual platforms in which people can do the equivalent of filling out virtual Post-it notes and putting it up on the equivalent of a whiteboard or a bulletin board or a big chart paper. So you see here an example from a recent town hall from East Bay Meditation Center, in which the question that East Bay Meditation Center leadership asked to the people who attended, our Sangha members, what are you most excited about regarding East Bay Meditation Center purchasing a building so that we can have what we're calling a sustainable home, a place of peace, power, and belonging is our hashtag. EBMC's sustainable home, a place of peace, power, and belonging. So what excites you about this? And you can see the Post-its in yellow. And then we also ask for the feedback and what are your concerns? Like in the first column, like what are your yay, yay. Like having more space, yay, we could have more space. Well, yeah, maybe. And then there are actual limitations on that. However, we're hearing, yes, the Sangha, of course, wants more space, more square footage. And then what are your concerns? What are you worried that we might be overlooking? Well, yeah, maybe we do get more space and then we buy a building and we can't pay for it and then we fall apart. So balancing our needs with financial health. At the bottom, you'll see needing it to be well lit to see interpreters, by which is meant ASL or American Sign Language interpreters. That beautiful quasi darkness in which many people feel kind of safe, and you have nice lighting, and it's all, I mean, I like it myself, even though my vision isn't good. So sometimes I'm like, turn up the lights. But if we're going to include hard of hearing and deaf folks in our sanghas, we need to consider the lighting so that they can see the interpreters and what is most important to you. We can't meet everyone's needs. So with this kind of tool, we're going to get a sense of, all right, what is most important to you? Let that kind of cream rise to the top so that we can try to respond and quote unquote, be accountable to what you've given us. Thank you very much. And if we could stop the screen share, Crystal, we'll now segue into 10 minutes of just some visualization and creativity, open creativity questions. And after which, at 2:10 Pacific time, we'll open 15 minutes of individual time for you to reflect and record, write it down, draw it, sketch it. So I think you've all been asked to bring writing or drawing instruments and paper, or some of you may have those nifty iPad things where you can draw with your finger. Whatever you've got, bring it. And open yourself to it. Maybe a little haiku or a poem comes to you, maybe a song. It could be just a sound. It could be a movement. Whatever it is, once again, we're not looking, we're not judging. That's going to be your time to have your camera off and just take it away. My original training was as a poet. And so I love it when there's that feeling of creativity and people. One of the classes I took in graduate school was by poet Sandy McPherson. It was called Risky Business. And it consisted of poems by very well-known poets that were kind of like failures or weird, in which, however, those poets had gone off from the formulas of what made them most successful, or maybe it was earlier work, and they were very interesting poems because they took a risk. They took the risk to fail and to look stupid and to just try something. So that's the kind of space we're encouraging. All right, so here's the question. We're going to enter into a space of visualizing my sangha of the 21st century. This is not the future, by the way. We're in the 21st century. What is my sangha? For each of us, we're asked to consider that. What is it, for me, my family, my community, my people will help us to feel safe, a sense of safety, dignity, and inclusion. So remember, you don't have to be psychic and know what other people needs. There's no way that can be true. However, when we come together and hear one another, then we are whole. All right. So we might also ask ourselves, what is it, we're not going to sit around on our butts and think, yeah, the leadership is going to provide everything else for us. That's not necessarily the case. It's just not possible. Don't put that kind of pressure on our leaders. However, leaders, can we be open to what the sangha can bring? So what is it also that you might be able to bring as an individual from your culture to your sangha? Be open to coloring outside the lines. It might be African indigenous spiritual traditions. It might be the favorite dish that you like to make for a potluck. It might be the songs of your childhood, and much more. Actually, much more things that are going on in our communities that are not reflected in our sangha, that are actually really serve large numbers of people. So as you're doing this, if you feel stuck, I urge you to get up and move around. Move the body. Move the body. And moving the body helps the brain to operate more creatively. Okay, so I'm just going to ask you, you can close your eyes or open them and make notes. You can do anything you want, actually. But don't worry about the questions because we're going to put them into the chat. So they will be in the chat for you. So don't worry about that right now. So here we are. Ta-da! We're opening space for envisioning my sangha of the 21st century. So say it's a physical place. It's a temple, it's a center. And you can visualize that you're moving towards your center or your temple, and you're approaching the doors, or maybe you open the doors and you go in. You might be walking, you might be rolling in your wheelchair or your scooter, or using your walker. So you're moving in close to that space. If we are hearing persons, which I believe we all are since we don't have ASL here, what do you hear? So remember, this is a space where when you go to those doors, you're so happy. This is your spiritual home. What do you hear? Do we hear silence? That like delicious, yummy silence of meditative absorption, samadhi. Do we hear children laughing, crying, shouting on their way to a children's class? Might we hear singing of a Dharma choir? Might we hear from quite a distance the loud and joyful drumming of a drumming circle? What do you hear? As you enter, what do you smell? Is someone cooking something? Is there the smell of incense? If you go to the bathroom, what kind of cleaning products do you smell, if any? Again, I encourage you, this is anything goes. Anything goes. What do you see? As you begin to encounter people in your sangha that you are visioning, who else is there in terms of people? What are their ages? Apparent abilities? Race, ethnicity, gender identity? So, of course, we cannot tell everything from looking. However, those of us who are sighted, we do look at other people, and then there are certain concepts and certain recognitions, and maybe we've made a mistake. However, as you enter to feel a sense of safety, dignity, belonging, who do you see? Take a look at the entranceway, the doorway itself, the gateway. How big is it? Can someone in a wheelchair feel very comfortable entering? Is there even a wheelchair ramp if there are steps? If it's a rural facility, is it accessible for people in wheelchairs? What are people doing and wearing, and what are you there to do? So again, I'm just going to be doing a kind of a stroll through, and then they'll be in the chat, and you'll have 15 minutes. How, very important, how are newcomers greeted? Crystal has pointed out that there's diversity in how people like to be greeted and accompanied when they first come to a sangha. How do we become more inclusive of different styles of how people wish to be greeted? How is the main shrine room set up? so my friend Reverend Harry Bridge, who is the minister of the Oakland Buddhist Temple or Church, part of the Jodo Shinshu Buddhist Churches of America network, for Buddha's birthday long ago, he invited me to be the keynote speaker, and he'd invited all the kids in the sangha to bring their favorite stuffed animals. And he put out a special table in the shrine part of the Buddha hall, and it was covered with all of these cute stuffed animals, including some of Reverend Harry's. And to tell the story of, you know, when the Buddha was born, baby Buddha, maybe all these animals were present. So how is the main shrine room set up? For the restrooms and bathrooms, what is the signage? Does it say men's, women's, boys, girls, all genders, everyone? Is there a place for changing diapers in the public bathroom for infants? You know, one of those things that come out from the wall, or a table, a diaper changing station. And how do people have difficult conversations in your sangha of the 21st century? Okay. And any other questions that you can think of? All right, so once again, we urge you to embrace your innate creativity, your vitality, and your ability to dream into reality new worlds. That's how it's done, folks. I mean, that's how East Bay Meditation Center came into being. Some people were like, yeah, this is what we want. And we're going to start raising money for it. And we're going to start with what we have. When we started out, I was on the board, and we would take our own garbage home in our cars because we didn't have a garbage contract. However, we knew what we wanted, and we kept our eyes on the prize. So we believe each of you is that potential visionary and innovator, and we will now have 15 minutes of individual time to reflect, record, draw it, sketch it, sing it, and move it. Get your favorite cup of tea or whatever, and we'll see you. And then there will be a 10-minute break, so that extends it even more at 2:25 to 2:35. At 2:35, we will please be back a few minutes before then, and we'll have the opportunity to debrief in small groups according to how we self-identify and the type of small group that would help us to be the best space for our creative selves. So thank you so much for deep listening, and my wish for you is have some fun.
So welcome back, everyone. We'd like now to offer you a chance to either continue to work on your own, or to share what you've imagined, what you've visioned, with a small group of others. So Anna has created some small groups that you will join. That is, you'll choose your group. So the choices of groups are, if you are BIPOC, there are BIPOC groups. If you are biracial or multiracial, there are groups for biracial, multiracial. If you'd like an all-white group, there's a white group. And if you would like a mixed group or a general group, there is a general group. And if you would like to meet on your own or just continue to work on your own, there's a Noble Silence group. So for the Noble Silence group, the understanding is that you would not interact, within that group. You'd turn off your mic, turn off your video, and very important, keep an eye on the time so that you can rejoin the main group when the time comes. The aim is to have groups of 3 to 4 people for folks who want to share. So as you're joining groups, please kind of keep that in mind. So if there's already 4 people in a group, please start a new group. Would like to invite you, the ones who are in groups, to do a practice of sharing and deep listening, so that there will be a total of, that'll be just over 10 minutes. And so we'd like you to just divide the time evenly, and each person simply share a story, an image, whatever came up for you in the visioning exercise, just kind of sharing it. And then after that, we will regather into the large group and invite people to share in the large community.